Powered by Riverside FM.
Welcome to another episode of Unconventional Playbook. Please take the minute to hit that like and subscribe button if you like the content. Continue to help the station grow. And also think about becoming a member of UP Nation. Those that become a member of UP Nation will automatically be entered into a drawing to win a Minnesota Vikings Winter Warrior jersey. So please consider becoming a member. Big news coming out of Cleveland. Myles Garrett, the Cleveland Browns stud defensive end, went into the front office and requested a trade. I saw this coming a mile away. Really, I predicted it, about a month and a half ago that this is what's going to happen to the Cleveland Browns now. And obviously, the Minnesota Vikings coming off a stellar season, lots of flexibility in terms of salary cap money, the position that they're in terms of being able to win now, Brian Flores and his vaunted defense. It's only natural that the Minnesota Vikings would be a destination of conversation about Myles Garrett possibly coming to the purple. I think naturally, when you look at Myles Garrett, if you're a Minnesota Vikings fan, you would like to have Myles Garrett in the fold. But I think that we got to think about some things. And I think the Minnesota Vikings are in, as I've said it on previous podcasts, they're in a really good situation and that they can't mess this up. When I look at Myles Garrett, obviously, he is a stud. He's obviously a stud. He's a very sexy name when it comes to, a guy that you would want that is out there requesting a trade or maybe on the free agent market, what have you. You want this guy to be a member of your football team. Here's a couple of things about possibly going after that maybe a lot of people aren't thinking about with Myles Garrett. Myles Garrett is a 4-3 guy. That means he's a hand in the dirt guy. I think putting him in a 3-4 would be something that would be completely different for him. And it's something that he really hasn't played before. And so to make that deal, he would either have to get really acclimated to the 3-4 or you have to change your whole scheme as a defense to accommodate him. And I don't know if the Minnesota Vikings would do that, number one. And I don't know if that would be good for the defense, number two. Would Brian Flores change his whole scheme? And if Brian Flores is changing his whole scheme, will he be Brian Flores? I'm not saying that he doesn't have the acumen to be able to do that, but what he has done the last 2 years with the Minnesota Vikings under a 3-4 scheme has been absolutely stellar. And do you do that for Myles Garrett? I know that there's a lot of arguments out there or a lot of people that would be critical of the trade because Myles Garrett would be about 30 years old. And so now you're like, well, how much tread does he have left in the tires? And so my whole thing is I pay a lot of attention to the Cleveland Browns because, again, that was my childhood team growing up. So I pay attention, I watch, and Myles Garrett is still a stud. You don't have to worry about that. Now, he's been banged up the last couple of years. He's got some issues. But Myles Garrett has always been someone that has played through injuries. He has not let that stop him from performing. And he's going to be out there every Sunday if he can be out there. So he's not one of these guys that just spends a whole lot of time on the IR. So in terms of toughness, Myles Garrett is going to be there. Here's what I know. People have been talking about, and I've heard it, that, hey, here's where you can franchise tag a Sam Darnold, trade Sam Darnold for Myles Garrett because the Cleveland Browns need a quarterback. And that is absolutely true. The Cleveland Browns are going to need a quarterback going forward. And you would think that Sam Darnold would be the perfect choice. The problem is Sam Darnold is going to demand a payday. And whether he looks at the Cleveland Browns in terms of a free agent market, which I don't see how that is possible because the Cleveland Browns can't afford him. I look at the same thing with a franchise tag. That franchise tag is going to cost you about $41 million. The Cleveland Browns, here's what a lot of people don't know about the Cleveland Browns. The Cleveland Browns can't afford that price tag. So a Sam Darnold for Myles Garrett trade just wouldn't work. Deshaun Watson is sucking up every penny that the Cleveland Browns has. I mean, that is one of the worst contracts that has ever been signed in the NFL, that Deshaun Watson contract. They are going to be so handcuffed going forward as a franchise because of that contract. Anything that's big in terms of assigning, the Cleveland Browns will not be able to do. That is why when you hear about the Cleveland Browns, our old friend Kirk Cousins is so attractive because the Atlanta Falcons owes Kirk Cousins a buttload of money. And now essentially Kirk Cousins, if he wants, can go out and do the whole Russell Wilson thing that Russell Wilson did to the Denver Broncos, signing with the Pittsburgh Steelers bare minimum. So that's why when we talk about perfect fit at the quarterback spot, if I'm the Cleveland Browns, I'm going after Kirk Cousins. There's a lot of flexibility there. Kirk Cousins is going to get paid either way. And Kirk Cousins wants to play. I don't see him wanting to sit behind Michael Penix Jr. So he's probably going to want to go elsewhere. And whoever gets an opportunity to get Kirk Cousins' talents, they're going to get him for dirt cheap. Sam Darnold is not going to come dirt cheap. And the Cleveland Browns, if you're looking at that $33 to $40 million price tag that Sam Darnold is going to garner, probably even more, the Cleveland Browns can't afford Sam Darnold. So that trade is out. In my opinion, the Cleveland Browns want to sell hope. They want building blocks. So the only asset, in my opinion, that I think has a lot of validity to it, that I've heard, is that if the Minnesota Vikings wanted to bring back Sam Darnold and let J.J. McCarthy go to the Browns, I think that would be the only, well, I shouldn't say the only asset, but that's where the Cleveland Browns would want to start. It fixes their quarterback problem. J.J. McCarthy is under a rookie contract, so they would be able to afford him. And he's a young, talented, franchise type guy. So I think for the Cleveland Browns, that would be the starting point, if they have any common sense. I mean, the Cleveland Browns do a lot of dumb stuff, man. This is why they're in the situation that they're in right now. The only other asset that I could see that may attract the Cleveland Browns to even consider sending Myles Garrett to the purple would be Dallas Turner. Again, rookie contract, cheap, talented, foundational piece, sell hope to the fans that this is who we have that's going to replace Myles Garrett. I don't think anybody else on the Vikings would be attractive to the Cleveland Browns in terms of Myles Garrett, where you don't have to deplete your team. Now, I think the Cleveland Browns would trade Myles Garrett for a haul, but if you're the Minnesota Vikings, what does your team look like if you have to give up some major pieces that may have some expiring contracts? Like, you don't want to deplete your team for a 30-year-old Myles Garrett. And I don't think the Vikings are going to want to do that. And I don't think the Cleveland Browns are going to want to get old pieces and not be able to build while they get rid of a franchise defensive end. The pieces that the Cleveland Browns are going to want, I don't think the Minnesota Vikings are going to want to give up. I can tell you right now, as much as I love Myles Garrett and as much as I would love to see him on this defense being coached by B-Flow, I think it would be an adjustment. That's number one. It wouldn't be a seamless fit, but I'm not giving up J.J. McCarthy for Myles Garrett. I'm telling you that right now. I say it time and time again. You've got to get the quarterback right. I'm not giving up my future franchise quarterback. It may be a risk. J.J. McCarthy, there's a possibility he may not be who we think he is, but I'm definitely riding that boat right now. I'm going to give him a shot. And I'm not giving that up to the Cleveland Browns for Myles Garrett because you don't need him. It's almost like you got a pocket full of money and you go into the mall and you just start buying stuff that you really don't need to buy. That would be the case with Myles Garrett. Be smart, improve your trenches, get you a cornerback, do well in the draft, turn the team over to J.J. McCarthy, and you're going to be okay. Unless the Cleveland Browns gives you a deal for Myles Garrett that you just can't turn away, I am just not going to aggressively pursue Myles Garrett and put myself in a situation that I don't want to be in. You got to be careful, UP Nation. You got to be careful, Minnesota Viking fans, of these sexy names that are out there where people tend to overpay or give more assets than they need to. On the other side of the coin, you don't want to have Myles Garrett end up at one of your rivals, Chicago Bears, Detroit Lions, Green Bay Packers. That's the risk of not getting him in purple. But again, I'm not going to deplete. You don't have any draft assets anyway, so you're not going to – the Cleveland Browns, you're not going to work out a deal for the Cleveland Browns with draft picks. It's going to have to be a combination of draft picks possibly and personnel, or more personnel than draft picks because you don't have any draft picks. And I don't know the type of haul that it would take to get Myles Garrett. You're giving up a lot of stuff that's good. And I'm not sure that I want to do that at this juncture for a 30-year-old Myles Garrett. Please hit that like and subscribe button. This has been Unconventional Playbook. Again, please consider becoming a member. Lots of perks coming up for our members. Please hit that like and subscribe button. This has been Unconventional Playbook. We will make sure to see you when we see you.